Welcome to the Narrated Vendetta. We bring you gripping tales of payback, justice, and reckoning. Let's begin.
Hello, my name's Camila. They say family protects you. Mine handed over the home I built brick by brick with my own hands to my sister's husband's family. And they did it smiling like I should have thanked them for the favor. They called it sharing, called me generous, said I wouldn't mind. But what they really meant was, she won't fight. She never does. They gave away my keys, replaced my name, and erased me from every photo. What happens when the quiet one finally says no? And why did it take losing everything to realize I was never in their story to begin with? They say if you give enough, people start expecting it, and if you give too quietly, they forget it was ever yours to give. I built that lakehouse from the ground up, 15 years of overtime checks, skipped vacations, and secondhand furniture so I could afford real granite countertops, French doors, and a screened-in porch that faced the water. It wasn't just a house. It was the only thing I'd ever made that couldn't be taken away with a thank you card and a smile. Or so I thought. The invitation to dinner came on a Tuesday. Vera, my mother, texted in all caps, "Family dinner this Saturday at Alto's. Mandatory. No explanation, no pleasantries, just a time and a place." Alto's wasn't the kind of spa you visited on a whim. It was where people celebrated anniversaries with dry-aged steak and handed out cigars. With dessert. The last time I'd eaten there was after I closed on the lakehouse alone. I paid the bill with cash and told the waiter it was my win day. I arrived 5 minutes early wearing a navy dress that I knew Vera would call basic. Seraphine was already at the table, glowing like a pageant queen in silk and teeth. Her husband, Gideon, sat next to her, nodding into his phone while Vera checked her reflection in a spoon. "There you are," she said like I was late. "We were just talking about you." I smiled, not because I wanted to, but because that's what I was trained to do. The dinner started polite to polite. Vera complimented Seraphine's latest charity gala. Silas, my father, asked Gideon about market trends. I ate slowly, barely tasting the food. Something was off. The air had that charged stillness, like the moment before a thunderstorm. Then came dessert and Vera's announcement. "We've decided," she said, her voice lilting like it was a wedding toast, "that Seraphine and Gideon's family will be using the lake house this summer. It's perfect for their anniversary reception. Don't you agree?" My fork paused midair. Gideon chuckled, really generous of the family. "Camila?" And then Silas, quiet, loyal Silas, pulled a key from his pocket and handed it down the table like it was a bread basket. It slid past the candles, past the untouched creme brulee, and landed beside Gideon's wine glass. No one looked at me. No one asked. I lowered my fork, wiped my mouth, and sat straighter. The buzz in my ears drowned out the clink of silverware and the murmur of gratitude from Seraphine. My name wasn't mentioned once, not even a perfunctory. Thanks to Camila for making this possible. Just a handoff, like I was dead. After the meal, I lingered behind while the others said goodbyes in the valet line. Vera looped her arm through mine like nothing had happened. I didn't resist. "Wasn't that nice?" She asked. "You're giving away my house," I said quietly. She blinked, unbothered. "Oh, honey, it's not giving, it's sharing. You hardly use it, and it's not like it's just yours." "Yes," I said, "it is." She patted my hand like I was a child with a crayon and no paper. "Camila, you've always been the practical one, but this is about family, about making an impression. Seraphine's in-laws have connections. This kind of hospitality will matter." "You understand I didn't. You're the only one without a husband, without kids," she continued. "You don't entertain. What's the point of a lake house sitting empty, empty?" That word lodged in my chest. I wanted to ask her if my life then was also considered empty, if my value was measured in bridal photos and family Christmas cards. Instead, I smiled. That same rehearsed smile I used when Vera spent my college fund on Seraphine's wedding dress and told me I'd never really liked school anyway. That same smile I used when I got laid off and she said, "Well, you never really had a career." More like hobbies. She didn't notice it then. She didn't notice it now. And maybe that's what finally broke me. Not the key being handed off. Not the assumption that my silence meant approval. Not even the rewrite of ownership, but the realization that I had spent my entire adult life being edited out of my own story. So I raised my glass. To family, I said, and I meant it. Because no one teaches you more about betrayal than the people who swore they protect you. I drank. I smiled, and in that moment, something deep inside me fractured clean. The next morning, I opened my phone, out of habit, and saw it, first as a notification, then as a flood. My cousin Mandy had tagged me in a comment. "Thought you'd be here," she wrote, followed by a winking emoji I didn't know how to interpret. The link was to a public album posted by Gideon's sister, Laurel, celebrating love and legacy at the lakehouse. The caption read, "My lake house." I clicked through the photos in a kind of daze. There was a front porch, now strung with fairy lights and cheap toll. The wreath on the door wasn't mine, inside. The furniture had been rearranged. A buffet table covered my reclaimed wood console. They'd moved my reading chair. In one photo, Vera stood in front of the fireplace, raising a glass. Behind her, where I had once hung a black and white photo of my first construction crew, men, who helped me build that place brick by brick, was now some generic canvas with brush strokes that screamed home goods clearance. Seraphine was wearing white, not off-white, wedding white. Her hair was curled like it always was during major PR events. Her smile reached just shy of her eyes. I wasn't in a single photo. Not even in the background, there was a group shot of the entire extended family on the back deck, wine glasses held high, Lake Travis gleaming behind them, every cousin, every niece and nephew, even Uncle Tom, who hated boats. Everyone was there, everyone but me. I stared at the screen, jaw tight, hands still. I wasn't surprised. Not really. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. But it was the first time I felt like I'd been officially deleted. The captions rubbed it in. Phrases like "our family's lake retreat" and "the legacy continues." Legacy? That word stuck like the past had been rewritten, and I'd been written out entirely. I went back through my own phone, scrolled until I found the pictures from when I first bought the land. I brought Mom and Dad to the empty lot, handed them hard hats like it was a joke. Vera had laughed and said, "Are you sure this isn't too much for you?" But when the walls went up and the deck wrapped around the hill's edge like a promise, she changed her tune. "You always did things your own way," she'd told me once. Standing in the kitchen before the cabinets were even installed. Maybe it's not the way we do it, but it's something. Now, none of it was mine, not in their eyes. Later that afternoon, I called Ely. She picked up on the second ring. "You saw it?" I asked. "I saw it," she said. Her voice had that steady tone she used in court when opposing counsel tried to gaslight a client. "Are you okay?" I let out a breath. "What do you think?" "I think you just got erased, not overlooked. There's a difference. I don't want to be the bitter daughter who complains about not being included," I said. Ely didn't miss a beat. "You're not complaining. You're documenting." That stuck with me. Sounded more like an instruction than a comfort. By evening, I had printed out every photo from the album. I circled each face with a red pen, one by one. Underneath each, I wrote the same word, witness, not accuser, not enemy, just witness. People who saw it happen. People who knew I existed and still played along. I sealed them in an envelope and slid it into the safe I kept beneath the kitchen sink, the one most people overlooked. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I didn't post a response. I kept the silence, but this time it wasn't passive. It was deliberate. They celebrated unity by removing the one person who held the place together. I didn't knock when I walked in. I didn't have to. It used to be my home. The drive out to the lake that Saturday was quiet, no music, no podcasts, no distractions. Just the hum of the road and a steady ache behind my ribs. I hadn't planned the visit. I hadn't told anyone. I just needed to see it for myself, to confirm what I already knew but hadn't fully allowed myself to absorb as I turned onto the gravel driveway. I had to brake. 3 unfamiliar cars were parked in a sloppy row. One of them right on the grass I'd spent a summers nurturing into something that felt like a lawn. The air smelled different. Someone had sprayed citrus cleaner or an air freshener. There was a new welcome mat at the door that said, "Home sweet home." The font was too bubbly, too cheery, too foreign. It might as well have been in another language. I slid my key into the lock, turned, but not easily, like the house hesitated to let me in. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The scent hit me first, not cedar and soft laundry, but lavender and some overly sweet floral thing that clung to the walls. The floor was colder than I remembered. The console table I built from reclaimed barnwood was missing, replaced by a metal and glass monstrosity that looked like it belonged in a chain hotel. The family photo that used to sit there, me as a child, Vera in a denim vest, Silas with hair still thick, gone. I walked slowly through the living room, my footsteps quiet on the refinished hardwood. I noticed the rugs had changed. The blue velvet couch I'd splurged on was still there, but its pillows had been switched out for beige ones. Neutral tones, generic, tasteless, but it was the fireplace. That stopped me. There, above the mantel, hung a framed photo. Seraphine and Gideon, their son, and Gideon's parents, dressed in all white, standing in front of the lake at sunset, arms linked like they were posing for a holiday card. The caption at the bottom read, "The legacy continues." I didn't remember ever hating a piece of wall art before. My hands curled into fists. My chest felt too small for the air it held. I walked down the hallway, past the guest bath, past what used to be my study. It was now a nursery, not a child's room, a curated nursery, cream curtains, animal prints, a rocking chair that looked like it had never rocked anything real. In the bedroom, I found my mother's quilt gone, the one sheet, hand-stitched over months while watching reruns of Columbo and sipping tea. She made it for me when I closed on the house. Said every woman should have something soft that couldn't be stolen. Now it was gone. And in its place lay a throw blanket in muted grays. With tags still attached, I stood in the middle of that room and felt like I was falling without moving. They hadn't just borrowed the house. They had overwritten it, scrubbed my presence out like a typo. My mind drifted back to the early days. The first time I laid tile in the kitchen with calloused fingers and aching knees. How I'd spent that entire spring painting the cabinets myself late into the night. One coat at a time, the door handles were chosen after hours of debate. I still remembered holding the samples in the aisle at Home Depot, calling Vera for her opinion, only for her to say, "You'll change your mind anyway. Just pick one." But I didn't. I stuck with my choice like I'd done with the land, like I'd done with my life. I walked through the house slowly, methodically, noting every detail. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I pulled out my phone and opened the video recorder. I panned over the new photos, the beige walls. The kitchen now stocked with mugs that read Gigi's house and lake vibes only. I spoke as I recorded, my voice steady and quiet. I pointed out what used to be there, where the quilt was, where the bookshelf I built from pine used to stand, where the painting I bought at the farmer's market hung until someone decided it didn't match the new aesthetic. This was mine, I said into the camera. Not shared, not borrowed, mine. I didn't know what I'd do with the footage. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But in that moment, I needed a record. Proof that I hadn't imagined my own life dot by the time I left. The sky had begun to change color. That soft golden hour that made the lake shimmer in ways I'd once described as magic. But it wasn't magic anymore. It was marketing. I locked the door behind me, the key catching a little more than before. I didn't lose a house that day. I lost a history. And they replaced it with a lie. The footage was clear. My name was gone. From the walls. And I started to wonder if it was disappearing from more than just the decor. 3 days later, I drove across town to the modest one-story house where my parents had lived. Since I was in middle school, Silas had texted me earlier that morning. "If you're coming, come before noon. Your mom's got errands." That was his way of saying he'd talk. But only if Vera wasn't there to do the talking for him. I parked along the curb, noticing the hydrangeas I planted last spring were gone, replaced by rocks and mulch. Somehow that felt symbolic. I walked up the familiar steps, knocked once, and opened the door. He never locked it. Dad was in the kitchen stirring sugar into his coffee like he always did. 1 packet. Stirred 5 times, tapped the spoon twice. "Hey, Kim," he said, not looking. "Up." I didn't waste time. "Did you agree to give them the house?" The spoon paused mid-stir. He sighed, not with guilt, but with the weariness of a man who'd avoided conflict for too long. "It's not giving exactly," he muttered. "You're part of the family. That means it's ours, not yours." His words didn't sting. They sliced quietly. Surgically? I stood there for a moment, letting them settle. Then I asked, "Did you sign anything?" Silas finally looked at me. His eyes were tired, rimmed red, nothing formal. "Vera's just exploring options, talking to people. That's all. She's talking like she owns it," I said. "Like I don't." He didn't answer. I walked out without another word back at my condo. I opened my file cabinet, found the folder marked Lakehouse title deed, and laid the paperwork across the dining table. My name was there in bold print. I hadn't taken out loans under someone else's name. I hadn't borrowed. I hadn't co-signed. This house was mine. I called the Travis County Records office. A polite woman named Susan checked the system for any recent filings. No change of ownership. She said, "Still under you." But that didn't match what I'd heard from Claire, an old friend of Vera's who had reached out 2 days ago. "Your mother, mentioned refinancing. Claire said casually as if discussing a recipe. Said they're optimizing the property value. I didn't tell her that there was nothing to optimize unless you owned it. I hung up and called Ely. You're early, she said. Picking up. I think they're planning something, I said. Silas is passive, but Vera, she's moving chess pieces, Ely sighed. Do you want to fight this with anger or with law? I sat at my kitchen counter, fingers curled around my mug. With silence first, then law. That's a smarter play, she said. I'll start flagging the deed. If anything moves, we'll know. We spent the next 20 minutes outlining what to track. If Vera attempted to open a home equity line or file a quitclaim deed, Ely's system would flag it. She told me not to worry, but I knew better after the call. I sat in the quiet and thought about how many times I'd let this kind of thing slide. When Vera used my college fund to throw Seraphine the wedding of her dreams, she told me, you never liked school anyway. When I came home from work one day to find my childhood bedroom turned into storage for Seraphine's old prom dresses, she said, we figured you'd be okay with it, even birthdays. Year after year, my name is spelled on cards or worse, not written at all. I had swallowed every slight like it was a vitamin, something bitter that I convinced myself was good for me. Until now, this wasn't just about a lake house anymore. This was about identity, dignity, boundaries. They'd redrawn the map of the family, and I was being erased from it in soft, manipulative strokes, but they hadn't counted on one thing. I'd stop being polite. The next time they touched what was mine, I'd be ready with more than a smile. They took my silence as surrender. That was their first mistake. It started with a ping, then 2, then 7. My phone lit up like a slot machine. At 6:40 that morning, my notifications were filled with congratulatory messages, but not to me, to Seraphine. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and clicked the first link. It was an interview she had done with a local lifestyle blog, a glowing spread titled At Home, with the Davenports, family legacy and lake views. The article called the house a cherished family heirloom passed down from Vera and Silas to their eldest daughter and her growing family. It went on to detail their commitment to preserving family history and honoring the vision of Vera and Silas McKinney. There was no mention of me. Not a footnote, not a quote, just a single reference buried deep where Vera was quoted as saying, we've always considered Seraphine the natural steward of the property. She's made it a home. Natural steward, like I was a placeholder, a project. Manager who handed over the keys once the paint dried. I stared at the page until the letters blurred. By noon, it had already been posted on social media and reshared across every corner of the McKinney families. Digital world. My phone buzzed with passive-aggressive pings from relatives. So proud of Seraphine. Looks beautiful. A real legacy. Moment. No one texted me directly except Mandy. Always Mandy. Her message read, you okay? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She knew. The following Tuesday, I got a text from Vera. Family dinner this Friday. No drama, just food. I almost laughed. But then I saw the attached image. A long table set for 16. A vase of lilies at the center. That was my mother's favorite flower. One I hadn't seen in Vera's house since before she started copying Seraphine's interior decorator. I stared at the invitation for a full minute before texting one word, I'll come. Friday night came too fast. I arrived exactly on time, not early, not late. I wore black. Not for drama, just clarity. Everyone was already seated when I walked in. Seraphine gave me a tight smile. Gideon nodded like he'd just spotted an employee he didn't want to acknowledge. Vera waved me toward the end of the table next to Uncle Tom, who smelled like mouthwash and would varnish. We ate in awkward politeness, roasted chicken, asparagus, warm rolls from a bakery I used to drive Mom to on Sundays. After dessert, lemon bars. Vera's idea of sophistication. She stood and tapped a fork to her glass. We've had some misunderstandings. Lately, she began. But tonight is about healing, about coming back together. I felt my stomach turn. The gall, the smooth, orchestrated manipulation. She continued. Let's not dwell on mistakes. Let's move forward as a family. That was my cue. I stood slowly, pulling the small flash drive from my coat pocket, calm, measured. Before we move forward, I said, let's make sure we're not standing on a lie. I walked over to the TV, mounted to the wall above the fireplace, and plugged in the drive. The room shifted. Silence like gravity. The recording began. It was audio only, but clear. Seraphine's voice clipped and confident. After the event, we'll finalize the paperwork. Camila won't fight. It's always been easier with her. The pause that followed was thick. Then my voice on the recording. You may tell any story you like, but don't use what I built to do it. Gasps, shuffling chairs, someone whispered, "Oh my God." Vera's expression froze mid-smile. Seraphine's mouth parted, ready to speak. I didn't let her. "You stole my home," I said. My voice even. "You told the world a lie." I just told it the truth. No yelling, no tears, just air. Finally moving in the room. Uncle Tom coughed, and Denise looked away. Gideon reached for his. Why does it pretending this wasn't happening would erase it? Vera started to speak. "Camila, this isn't I held up my hand. I don't need your apology," I said. "And I don't need your version of events." I turned to Seraphine. "You wanted to erase me. But I recorded the part you didn't script, and just like that." I sat back down. No one clapped. No one cheered. But for the first time, no one interrupted. I didn't need their approval. Just the room to speak finally without interruption. The silence they gave me wasn't permission. It was proof they thought I wouldn't fight. And they were wrong. 2 days after the family dinner, I was sitting at my dining table going over the copies of court filings with Ely on speakerphone. When my email chimed, the subject line read, "Footage you might want to see." It was from Paul Jenkins, our old next-door neighbor from the lakehouse. I hadn't heard from him in years. Curious, I opened the message. There was a Dropbox link and a short note, "Camila, I thought this might be relevant to everything you've been going through. My security camera caught this about a month ago. It didn't feel right not to share." I clicked the video. It was grainy, angled from the edge of Paul's driveway. But the footage was unmistakable. Vera and Silas were at the front door of the lakehouse. With them were Gideon's parents. I watched as Silas fumbled with keys and handed. I said to Gideon's father. Vera stood beside him, arms crossed, nodding like it was a real estate transaction. The sound quality was faint. But when Vera turned slightly toward the camera, her voice was caught just enough to register. "She won't be a problem," she said. Camilla's always been polite, the way she said it. It wasn't a compliment. It was a weapon. My restraint had been their permission slip. I forwarded the clip to Ely. No words, just the video. The next day, we went down to the county clerk's office. I brought the footage, the forged POA, and the cease and desist documentation. Ely brought her binder, color-coded, labeled. She always came prepared, like she expected someone to challenge her authority. "This isn't just a property matter anymore," she told the clerk. "It's fraud, intent to transfer without consent, and public misrepresentation of ownership. We filed a public reaffirmation of ownership. My name, my deed, my terms. A formal complaint against Vera and Seraphine went to the county's civil fraud division. Ely made sure everything was stamped, sealed, tracked. It felt good, not victorious, not vindictive, just solid. I didn't call Vera. I didn't notify Seraphine. I let the papers arrive at their doorsteps with quiet thunder. That weekend, I drove back to the lake house. It was the first time in weeks I went there without a stomach full of knots. The air was cooler, the driveway empty. I let myself in and walked through slowly. I wasn't inspecting this time. I wasn't documenting. I was just being. I ended up in the hall closet. It was half empty, a few dusty boxes shoved to the back. I hadn't looked in there since the remodel. Behind a stack of old Christmas lights and water filters, I saw a manila envelope yellowed with age. My name was written across. The front in my mother's handwriting. Not Vera's, my real mother, Lena. My breath caught in my throat. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded 3 times. The ink had faded slightly, but her handwriting was unmistakable, slanted, neat. Always with a little curve on her Y's. "Camila, it began, if you're reading this, means you're still fighting, and I want you to know you were always meant to. I saw the way you looked at that lot even before the first board went down. You saw a future. You built it from nothing. You created something lasting. Don't let anyone take that from you. Not with a smile, not with a favor, not with family ties that tie you down. This house is yours, not because you paid for it, but because you poured yourself into it. Don't ever let anyone call it theirs." My hands shook. I sat down on the closet floor. It wasn't just a letter. It was a bridge between who I'd always tried to be and who I was finally becoming. I read it again, and then one more time. Eventually, I moved to the porch, letter still in hand. The lake shimmered in the late afternoon light, and for once, I wasn't thinking about who might show up or what they might say. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was seen by the one voice that never once made me earn my worth. They tried to erase me, but my mother wrote me back into the story. I wasn't fighting anymore. I was living on land I built in peace. They could no longer distort. A few quiet weeks passed. I stayed at the lakehouse full time now. No more weekend drives, no more bouncing between two lives. Just one. The one I created for myself. The one I had fought to keep. The air felt different out here. Cleaner maybe, or just quieter. I stopped waking up with tension in my chest. The silence that used to feel like loneliness now felt like clarity. I hadn't heard from Vera since the night of the dinner. Not a call, not a note, just a void that strangely no longer needed filling. Silas, though. He sent a card, a folded piece of stationery with his name scribbled in the corner. I didn't know what to say then. I still don't. But I saw the photo. It was yours. It always was. It wasn't an apology, not really. But it was a nothing that, for him, was a kind of confession. Seraphine disappeared completely from my feed. No more lifestyle features, no curated posts, no updates on the lake house they tried to rename as their own. The local paper issued a correction. A footnote at the bottom of the online article. No headline, no bold letters, just a dry clarification. An earlier version of this article misstated the ownership of the Lake Travis property. We regret the error. I didn't need more than that. Around town, people whispered. Some avoided eye contact at the grocery store. Others nodded subtly when they passed me by as if to say, we know. A few went out of their way to ask if I was okay. I always gave the same answer. Better now. Healing didn't come all at once. It never does. I started with the living room. The beige paint they had slapped on the walls was the first thing to go. I repainted it a soft sage green, the color I originally chose when I built the house. It took me to weekends and a lot of aching shoulders, but every stroke felt like reclamation. I found the old quilt Lena made tucked behind boxes in the hallway closet. It still smelled faintly like her lavender and ivory soap. I washed it gently, then draped it back over the sofa exactly where it belonged. Some photos I deleted, some I kept. I threw out the ones that felt like props, staged for an audience. But I framed one image of the house under construction, me in overalls holding a blueprint, and squinting into the sun. That one stayed. One evening, not long after repainting, Eunice came to visit. She didn't say much. She never did. We sat on the porch swing, mugs of tea in hand. The lake shimmered below us. She looked out over the water, then back at me. Her eyes, still sharp despite her age, settled on mine. You didn't just save the house. You saved yourself, she said. I nodded. No tears, just acknowledgement. That night, I cleaned out the last junk drawer, a cracked pen, a pair of scissors, expired batteries. Underneath it all, I found the disposable camera I'd bought months earlier, back when I thought I might photograph. The garden I never planted. I loaded it. The next day, right before dusk, I walked out to the porch. The light was soft, stretching golden across the deck and the trees behind it. I set the camera on the railing, aimed it just right, and pressed the timer. Then I sat in the swing, wrapped Lena's quilt around my shoulders, and cradled a warm mug between my hands. The shutter clicked out. I posted the photo to my social media without a caption at first. Let it breathe. Then I added one line. Some things aren't taken, they're reclaimed. Sometimes the deepest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who were supposed to protect you. This story wasn't just about a house. It was about reclaiming a voice that had been quiet for far too long.